Hello, everyone, and welcome, Kat, to the Magnetically Aligned Women event. Now, for everybody watching, Kat Kim is a spiritual teacher, leadership coach, and founder of the School of Divine Confidence, an online school that offers spiritual training and confidence coaching to rising women leaders and changemakers across the world. As a former crack addict and a convicted drug offender, facing 3 years in state prison, Kat battled addiction, abuse, and depression to come out on the other side. Her inspiring transformation and work with the real people worldwide has landed her on set with Dwayne The Rock Johnson as a contributing coach on his motivational reality TV show called The Wake Up Call that aired nationally on TNT. Today, Kat continues to impact thousands of people using her bold and unconventional presence to help them build unshakable confidence in knowing who they are and what they are here to do. Wow.
Aw.
I am so happy that you're here, Kat, and I would just love to know a little bit more about your personal journey and now how that transitioned into what you do.
Yeah, sure. First of all, thanks so much for being here. You and I just hit it off right away, energetically. And so it's just been so fun to get to know you. My journey really began, I think, when I was 6 years old. My mother began feeding me diet pills.
Oh,
And I was just barely tall enough to look over like the kitchen counter. I was like this. And one day, she was at the kitchen counter, she was at the cutting board, and she was cutting the pills in half. And I looked up at her like this, and I was like, "What are you doing, Mom?" And she said, "Well, these are diet pills, and these are for adults. And since you're only a child, you only need to eat half of it." And I just basically, at that age, I didn't have the cognitive awareness to even know that, hey, this could be really wrong.
oh
I
my goodness.
essentially accepted whatever she was giving as truth, and basically I accepted at that young age that I was ugly, that I was unworthy, and that I was unwanted, and that I needed something outside of me in order to fix myself. And so I felt all of these things all by the time I was in second grade. And this was kind of like the beginning of a lifelong struggle of low self confidence, body image, and self worth issues. I grew up in a very emotionally and physically abusive environment. And then so I started rebelling at a really young age. And so I started smoking and drinking at 13, doing hardcore drugs at 16. And by the time I was 18, I was dealing cocaine. And I was transporting it from Washington State to California on the plane.
Oh my God.
This was pre 9/11. And I'm trying to think, were you guys even born by that time? You guys were little
Was,
babies.
but I was an infant.
Yeah. This was pre 9/11, and it was surprisingly easy to do that. So one day I was caught, I was handcuffed, I was put behind bars, and suddenly I was facing 3 years in state prison. And I was in Oakland, California at this time. Oakland at that time was notorious for its high rates of homicides and violent crimes. And I was right there in the middle of all of that. And you would think that was my wake up call. You'd think that would be like, okay, I need to get my life together. This is not good. But it wasn't. I was absolutely fearless, but it wasn't the type of fearlessness that comes from your heart, courage. Courage, the root word of courage is cur, which is the heart. It
Mm,
wasn't that type of fearlessness. It was a type of fearlessness that came from having no regard for my life and my future, my body. And I didn't care what was happening to me. Inside jail, I just thought, you know what? I'm here. I'm going to network and I'm going to try to make some drug deals. I'm going to try to make some connections with people in Oakland. And it was just this, I was on this fast path to self destruction that I was just going as fast and as hard as I could. It's like I was looking for something. I was like trying to feel something, but I wasn't feeling anything. I was just like going, 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 going. I pled guilty because I was caught red-handed, and that's another story for another interview. That whole process. I went to rehab for 2 years. I cleaned up the drugs and alcohol, but that feeling of not being good enough, not being accepted, the feeling of being ugly and unwanted and unworthy, that stuck with me. That still lived inside of me. That was my truth. And because that was my truth, I attracted everything into my life that validated those beliefs to be true. And although I had, come out of jail and I was clean with drugs, I began to get involved in really, really toxic relationships with men who abused me emotionally, didn't believe in anything that I was doing. And it wasn't until many years later, I was walking down my apartment hallway. I was depressed, really, really depressed. I could barely move, out of bed. Like one day I remember just this heavy energy pushing me down. And I couldn't even move my arms off. I was in the couch at that time because I slept all day practically. I couldn't move my arms off the couch. And one day somehow managed to get off the couch. I was going somewhere, I don't even remember, walking down my apartment hallway to the elevator door, and there's this really big mirror that it was like a floor to ceiling mirror that hung on the wall across the elevator door. And I had my head down, and I was walking down the hallway. I looked up and I caught a glimpse of someone in the hallway, and she was standing there, and I saw her in the mirror. And she was like really unkept. She was wearing big baggy clothes. Her face was really puffy and swollen and red. And I didn't, like, in that moment I was wallowing in my own toxicity. But when I saw her, I just thought, oh my God, at least I'm not that bad.
Ooh,
Because there was this like really dark emanating energy that was coming from her. It wasn't so much about how she looked. It was just like, she just was like, I just was like, oh, at least I'm not that bad. And then it hit me like a ton of bricks that there was nobody else in that hallway. Nobody. It was just me. I had become so disconnected with who I wanted to be as a woman and who I was being that I didn't even recognize myself when I saw myself in the mirror. And finally, that was my wake up call. That was when I decided I would do whatever it takes to become aligned, to become the woman that I wanted to be. And it's a little bit over dramatic, but this is literally how it happened. I stepped into the elevator door, and now I'm looking across the hallway in the mirror, and I'm seeing that reflection of myself. And as the elevator door is closing, that was when I said, "This is it, it's over.
wow.
Like now I'm going to do whatever it takes to become the woman that I wanted to be. I wanted to be beautiful. I wanted to be sexy. I wanted to have power. I wanted to make an impact. I wanted to transform lives. I wanted to walk into a room and have people notice me, um not for how I look, but for my presence. I wanted to have that like aura of presence, and have people be curious about who I am and remember who I am, not forget that I ever existed. And so I began studying everything under the sun around transformation. And up until that point, I walked around like I was the ugliest, meanest bitch in town. I never took care of myself. I was overweight, but I began transforming everything. I became a certified professional image consultant. So I started studying color and style and like body shapes and how to accentuate the beautiful parts of a woman's face and woman's body. And then I began studying the physical body, and I became a nationally certified personal trainer because I wanted to understand what the physical body goes through to undergo transformation. So I studied nutrition and physiology and biology and like weight loss and all of that thing. And I started to make this transformation. I started to take care of myself. I started to care about how I showed up in the world. And slowly these transformations began to happen. And then I became a certified transformative life coach. Took 3 years to go through this training where I began to understand the power of the mindset, and how it's connected to the results that we're having in life. And ironically, this obsession, this quest for transformation on the outside to become aligned, it kept taking me deeper and deeper inside into the world of spirituality and quantum physics and metaphysics. And this is where I discovered that everything that we're seeking in the outside world, everything that we want, more health, more money, more relationships, better relationships, all those things, that we think we want, all of that begins with how we are thinking and how we are feeling on the inside. And ultimately, it begins with our relationship, not just with ourselves, but our relationship with our higher power, spirit, God, whatever name you have for it. And I did not ever realize that my quest for transformation on the outside would take me to this place of nurturing a relationship with God. I had no idea that it would take me there. But this is the place where I discovered what divine confidence is. Divine confidence, I define as um, having an unshakable faith in knowing who you are and what you're here to do, regardless of what's going on in the world outside of you, regardless of who the president is, regardless of a global pandemic, regardless of how much money you have, regardless of the number on the scale, right? If you want to get truly aligned, you have to align with that divine confidence that already lives within you. So now this is, I started the School of Divine Confidence, and this is what I've dedicated my life to helping other people go through that same transformation and evolution.
Oh my goodness, that was an incredible life journey. And like now that you have, this, that you've developed the foundation of that unshakable divine confidence, what, how would you personally describe like feeling aligned with yourself? Like, what does that mean for you?
So, really good question. I teach my students and my clients this process, and it's so important that we are able to turn our focus and our energy away from the outside world and move inwards. Why is this important? It's because we live in a consumer culture that is constantly bombarding us with images, ads, social media, drama, events, all of that world that's going on out there. People are caught up in that. People have given their power away to the physical things. And I don't know if I'm sure you have, because I know this is the case for everybody, but there's this feeling of like, I have to get this thing, I have to do this thing on the outside in order to be validated, in order to feel good on the inside. And so the way to get there, according to metaphysical spiritual laws, number one, is that you can't create anything in the outside world. You can't experience anything in the outside world unless you have that created and experienced in your heart and in your mind first, in the inside world, in the metaphysical world, beyond the physical. So it's always a constant journey of going from out here, seeking this thing, wanting this thing, to going back right here. And knowing that right there in the middle of your heart center, right there is actually where you already have everything. And that's the journey. You always have to go back inwards.
Very interesting. And like, it's so true when you mention like I've noticed this in my own journey. It's always been an external source of validation, an external thing that I desired. And when I got it, I'm like, I don't really want that actually. Like, why is there still a void? Right. I remember this
Exactly.
when I got married, I was like, I want that ring. Like I want it, I want it, I want it. It's big, it's beautiful. But then I got it and now I don't even wear it. Like it doesn't, at that moment in time it had so much meaning. It was like, oh my god, like it's so shiny, this is externally validating, it looks beautiful. And then I got it and I was like, I still don't feel a change in happiness. I still, like I don't feel any what I thought I would feel from these external things. And
Yeah.
for somebody who's gone through, and I know you work with a lot of people who do go through this, and even myself, I found myself in these situations where we do feel a lot of conditioning from our family, like not feeling beautiful or um, not being able to accept ourselves for who we are, and constantly seeking outside to change who we are. Like,
Mm.
what? Why is it that when we feel these things, it doesn't translate in the outside world? Like, I'm not sure if it's worded correctly, but when your inside foundation is not stable, why is it that everything else on the outside is also unstable?
Beautiful. Okay, so these are metaphysical spiritual laws. So what that means is that everything we are experiencing in the outside world is a direct reflection of what we are thinking and feeling on the inside. It's a direct reflection. So if we look out there and we're not happy with what we don't have, and we're constantly feeling like we need this thing and this thing and this thing, you're having that experience because in your mind, in your subconscious mind, in your thoughts, and in your heart, you are feeling not enough. You are feeling like you don't have enough and you're not good enough. And check this out, Nikki. I've worked with people across the board. I've worked with millionaires who have wineries, they own buildings, they own land, they own all that, they've got millions of dollars. I've worked with people who are absolutely broke, you know, single mothers who are on welfare. Um, I've worked across the board and with people from various sides of the political spectrum too. It doesn't matter. The one thing that I realize is the same with all of these people is this feeling of not having enough, not having enough, and not being enough. It is a feeling and a thought that permeates our culture and has no there's no lines in who feels this and who doesn't. And that's the culture that I want to bring our awareness to, is that we are living in a culture that teaches us and that thrives off of our fears and insecurities of not having enough and not being good enough. We're constantly bombarded like, you're not good enough until you have this thing, this ring,
Yeah.
this car, this business, this body, right? This Instagram account, these number of followers. So I want everyone who's listening to this to really pay attention to how often they feel like I don't have enough and I'm not good enough. Start paying attention and you will begin to see, wow, it's like it's everywhere. And the way to solve that is not to get the thing. It's not to get the thing. It's to go inwards. And you have to create that powerful sense of divine confidence from the inside.
Mm. Now, how does one start like cultivating that?
Yeah. Okay. Really good question. So I help people through, in fact, I just created this mini course. It's called The Secret to the Secret, and the 4-step path to rapid transformation that mainstream law of attraction teachers don't talk about. And there's 4 phases, and the first phase is the calling. And what I teach in this first phase is everything that I've just said. Like, number one, you have to see yourself and understand that you live in a culture, we all live in a culture that has been created and programmed and that thrives off of our fears and insecurities. So we're bombarded by all of these ads and all these reasons for why we need something outside of us in order to be okay, right? So we tend to think, yeah, we need that ring, we need this business, we need this thing. But if you're going to go inwards, you have to really, really get clear on what your true calling is. And you will discover that oftentimes that calling actually is not about that physical thing. There's something else. But because we're so brainwashed to think and believe that we need this physical representation of it, we've completely um, we are completely unaware of what we really want. So so like my journey and what I bring my students and clients through is is number one, it's about deconditioning all of those false beliefs and then really getting clear about what their true heart of hearts desire is. It boils down to that.
Wow. So, like, when it comes to core beliefs,
Mhm.
um, how does it usually develop? Like, how do we, I guess, like, we always grow up and then all we know is the world around us. So, how do we know what's right and wrong? And then,
Yeah, that's a really good question. Okay, so it's very simple. It really comes down to what's important to you, what's really important to you. Again, we are conditioned to think what's important to us is all these physical things, right? But it's actually not that. So let me ask you, Nikki, you thought what was important to you was this ring, right? And it represented something to you and you thought that's what you wanted, but come to find out you don't even wear it. What did you learn about yourself, Nikki? What was really important to you?
that it wasn't about the ring that defined the love, Like, I thought, oh, the bigger, the more beautiful, the more love there is in the relationship. So it's like, I want you to get me that ring
Yeah.
because it signifies the love we have for each other. And
Mm,
in the end, I realized it was a people pleasing mechanism because everybody told me, if you have a nice big ring, it means your husband loves you. But in the end, like, I didn't feel any different when I got it. So
yeah.
it
So
didn't
what did
feel the
it
love.
didn't do anything, right? So what
Yeah.
was it? What was really what did you discover that was really important to you between you and in this context of the ring and your husband supposedly loving you, but what was it that you discovered about that?
It was just the security, I guess. Like that security, I gave myself that security. The relationship that I have was,
Yeah.
I already knew deep down, and it wasn't about the ring that gave the security.
Yeah. Wow. It was so then for you, that would be one of your values, security.
Mm.
Yeah. So now you can take that value and you can use that as a compass or a way to decide, does this add to my security or does it take away? Does this enhance my security or does it take away from it? So you start making decisions with that value of security. Will If I do this in my life, will it um, will it help the security of my relationship with my husband, or does it ruin it? Those That's how you get really clear about what your values are.
Oh, wow. And now that you speak on values, like, are there a set of values that most people follow or have?
Um, no. So when I help people get clear on what they want, it's like a soul print. It's like a fingerprint. Everyone has their own unique set of values. And again, it's this process of moving away from our idea of what we should like and want in the consumer culture and
Mm.
getting really clear about what our heart of hearts desire is. Everyone's values are different. And here's the crazy part, like, you as a upcoming mother, right, you're going to have your own values and your child will have their own set of values. But what happens is we tend to think, oh, because they're my mother or they're my child, they need to value the same things that I value. But it's actually very different. Everyone has their own unique set of values. For me, when I if you think about the story that I shared, I was so out of alignment with my value, my
Mm.
calling around beauty. I was not honoring it my entire life until I had that moment with the mirror. And I realized that beauty is one of my personal values. And every time I don't pay attention to it and I dishonor it, or I make it seem like it's not worthy, I become out of alignment with who I really am. I feel the best when I am honoring beauty in my life, whether it's taking care of myself or my surroundings, or how I am showing up in the world, my presence. The way that I show up is based on my value of beauty, but it's not just physical. It's when I show up and I see the beauty in other people's faces, I see the beauty in their words, I see the beauty in, their life. And when I look at life and other people through that lens, through my values, they feel that from me. They feel that from me. And so there's this beautiful exchange of energy that happens that is authentic and that's aligned.
Oh, I love that. Oh, wow. So like, um, now these changes don't just happen overnight. So,
Yeah.
like all these beliefs that you have and part of your program teaches like what what feels right for you. Now, um, for me personally, like I've found that I had to go through a lot of emotional uprooting to get
Hmm.
to the depths. How do you help women or the clients that you work with walk through that process?
Hmm. So it's a perfect question because that's the second phase of the cycle of spiritual transformation that I teach. The first is the calling, where you get clear on what your values are, what your good is, what your heart of hearts desire is. The minute that you get clear, what happens is all of the things, all the emotional, physical, and mental clutter will present itself to you to show you this is out of alignment with that value of yours. This is out of alignment. And so most people, when they get to this phase, they start to hear all the negative voices. They start to think, I can't do this, this is not right. Like things will happen, like emotional things, drama will happen. Your unconscious mind will present to you all of the things that need to be cleared. And most people during this phase ignore it. They want to move past it. They don't like to feel the uncomfortable emotions. So they will resort to distracting themselves, drugs, alcohol, social media, all those things.
Mm.
But this is a phase that is so important to understand that all of these uncomfortable emotions, all of these negative thoughts, they're all purposeful. You're not in the wrong spot. They are all just showing up for you to show you this is ready to be cleared. This is ready to be healed. Right. So when you are going through your emotional stuff, that was showing up for you not because you were wrong, not because you did something wrong. They were showing up for you because they were ready to be healed.
Mm. Now, for me, it comes up as triggers. Now, is that
Yes.
a normal process?
Yep. Yep. Your triggers are one of the prime ways for your soul to show you this is, there's healing that needs to be done in this area.
Because I remember every time I talked about, something with my mom, like tears would show up out of nowhere, and I'm just like, why is this coming up right now?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And and now that you mention it, it's like that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because at a certain point, at that point in my life, it wasn't that long ago actually, where I started questioning everything that I believed in life, especially during COVID. I was like, I've been doing a lot of things to please other people, especially my mom.
Mm.
And I realized when I started talking about her, then I started feeling. And I would cry so
Yeah.
sensitive. Like I would cry out of nowhere. I would cry to strangers on meditation. And I'm just like, oh my God, what is happening to me? What's going on?
Yeah. Yeah. Your soul was just, it's clearing, it's cleansing. It's there's nothing wrong with it. And that's the danger, that a lot of people think that because they're feeling depressed or sad that there's something wrong. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. These uncomfortable emotions are so beautiful. There is wisdom behind them, there is power behind them. And the more we try to push them down and repress them, the more that they will fight back. They will get bigger and bigger. There's no way that we can bypass this. So it's really important to allow that to come up and to show up for you and not judge it at all.
Thank you for sharing that. And after that phase, like what's the next phase?
What happens after that is if you've gone through that clearing phase and you allow that stuff to show up, then you will begin to feel lighter. The reason that that phase is so important is because you have to clear mental, emotional, and physical clutter to make space for your calling, to make space for things to show up for you that are aligned with your values, right? That are aligned with your good. So, what happens if you've been through phase two, which is the hardest phase, um, and you've really cleared some of that stuff, then you will have like space for stuff to come in. This is the phase where affirmations and visualizations actually work. This is where you get synchronicity. This is where you feel like you get intuitive hits. This is where things are feeling like much more harmonious. This is where it gets really fun. And this is the place where you get spiritual breadcrumbs, like, oh, and you just follow them without any attachment. That's the key. You can't be attached to the way that you want to create and manifest, because when we become attached, that's when we're completely shutting off to the infinite number of ways that your calling and your good and your values can be expressed in your life.
Now, have you experienced where people would, or you personally would would fall back into an old pattern or like fall back into an old habit?
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. And that's why this phase is real. That's why this phase, the third phase, is called emergence. That's why this phase is really important. Because so imagine phase one, you've claimed that, okay, this is what I want. In phase two, all the reasons for why you can't have it are showing up, but you've cleared it. In phase three, if you're not actively have an active spiritual practice and you're affirming your new life and you're creating a new mindset and you're creating new thoughts, if you're not doing that, then you will absolutely go backwards. You will absolutely go back because it's a habit. It's a habit to go back to your previous state.
Is there a certain timeline when it becomes no longer a habit or it's different for every person?
It's different for every person, it's different for the topic. For some people, for example, money is a huge issue, because there's been stuff in their family. Like for me, my family, my father had a gambling addiction, and money is like something there where there's been so much shame and like secrets around.
Mm.
So to heal that, you can't do that overnight, right? So this takes a lot more time. Um, for some people, it could happen really quickly. So let's say they don't have a lot of generational trauma around money or certain issues, then they can work through that very easily. Some people have issues around health or relationships that are so rooted in their lineage that it's really difficult. It takes longer, but that doesn't mean there's something wrong. It just means this is your soul path and it's going to take a little bit longer. For other people, it's really short because they don't have the like trauma around it.
Oh, I understand. Okay. And um, now moving on from that, you said there's four, right? Four stages?
Yeah. Yeah.
What would the last stage look like?
The last stage I call presence. This is your new personal presence. This is your new how you show up in the world. How you show up in the world in this phase is very different from how you were before you began. And this is the phase where you just show up. You are showing up as the presence of security, for example. When you show up as the presence of security, in your relationship, how you speak, how you talk, how you react to your husband is completely different. What's important to you, how you react to other people is completely different. And it just happens naturally. I imagine for you feeling secure in your relationship, you're just secure and your husband will feel that security from you. That's the power of presence. And that's where you manifest with absolute ease because you are showing up that way. You don't have to think about it. You're just showing up as the presence of it. And
Oh,
then,
I love that.
Yeah, and you can apply that to anything, the presence of beauty. So for me, beauty was such a big topic in my life, being fed diet pills when I was 6 years old and being told that I'm ugly and fat. And so beauty is one of my core values that number one, I was being called into. Like spirit wants to show up through me as beauty. And so this is something I've worked through for so long. And now I show up as the presence of beauty, like I was sharing earlier, and people feel it. People feel it. It's not a physical thing. It's
Mhm.
that when I look at life and I look at people and I talk to people, I just see beauty and I sense it, and I don't have to try. And so people feel that, and therefore I just manifests opportunities for more and more beauty and joy in my life.
Now, I always, I always associate alignment with abundance in life because when you feel aligned with yourself, then everything else in life feels good. So
Yeah.
for you, what does abundance look like?
Beauty, power, and ease. Those
Mm.
are the three. I've done a lot of work on this. Yeah. So I know what mine are: beauty, power, and ease.
I
Um,
love
when
that.
I'm aligned with those three things, I am I am like I'm on a roll. Like I've got everything is in check. I'm powerful, I'm beautiful, and it's easy. And I bring in people that are attracted to that, and my business runs smoothly. Everything runs so smoothly. But it's a practice. It's a practice. I forget what those things are. And I have to constantly remind myself, and that's why spiritual practice is so important.
How do you practice that? Like for somebody out there who's just starting and they want to feel aligned, how do you practice to feel that way all the time?
Yeah, goes back to the very first thing. I turn my attention away from the outside world. I become aware of when I'm getting attached to things outside, and I go back in. I go back
Mhm.
inwards. I figure out what is my true calling in this moment. What is my heart of hearts desire? It's a constant inward journey.
Thank you for sharing. And I know you have something special for the audience. Would you share that with us?
Yeah, I've got so many things. I would first say, come join me in my free Facebook group. It's called the Confident Leadership Community. I really love working with rising women leaders and spiritual seekers. And I love helping people overcome their fears and blocks and shame so they can really step into the highest version of themselves and truly make a difference. In the group, that's where I have, so many things that I would love to offer. But the one thing that I'd love to offer you guys right now is an audio training called Shame to Confidence. From Shame to Confidence, the one magical question to reclaim your personal power. And this is the question that I asked myself time and time again when I was broke, I was drugged out. I was a high school druggie. There was one magical question that I asked myself that helped me to reclaim my power. And this audio training is where I go deeper into that.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I will always link that below for the audience members who are watching. And for to end this off, I would love to hear some words of wisdom or your favorite quote that you can leave us with.
I would say this. I would say, you know, it always comes back to really knowing what your true calling is. And I truly believe that when each of us step into that, we find clarity and we step into our calling, that you will become the answer to someone's prayer. Someone out there right now is crying, praying, asking for something because they're in pain. And spirit is very efficient. When someone asks for that thing, someone else has the answer. And when you answer that call, you become the answer to someone's prayer.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Kat, for sharing that. And thank you so much for being on here. It has been amazing to have you.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me, Nikki.
You're very welcome. And for everyone else watching, I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.